BLUELOCK's final selection is fast approaching as the Neo Egoist League is coming to an end, and the preparation for the highly anticipated U20 World Cup begins. In preparation for the World Cup, this will be BLUELOCK's last training arc before the big games, and they also need to define the starting spots for the Japan team, so it's definitely an important one. Builds up hype, it's super important to the plot. This arc will finalize everything and answer all of our questions before the U20 World Cup, which again is the whole point of BLUELOCK. But we have no direct clues or context as to what this arc will be, but I've gathered some evidence and also just using previous arcs to predict or give my best shot at what I think will happen after the Neo Egoist League. So let's hop into it. So first things first, we know this arc is pretty much mandatory. I highly doubt we'll go from a crazy arc like the NEL to the World Cup without properly deciding the starting lineup like how the third selection did for the U20 match. It really doesn't make sense for Ego to decide the team just from the NEL. Another reason why it's mandatory is because it gives our players more development or more special training before the U20 World Cup. Again, like the third selection did before the U20 match, it's a lot of comparisons here, but I'm leaning more towards the starting lineup because we did see all that training and development in the NEL already. So with that being said, I'm gonna call this arc one of two things: either the U20 preparation arc, I know, kind of basic, or the striker selection arc, and you'll see what I mean later on. I don't know about you guys, but I think striker selection is way cooler. Like, damn, just the name striker selection just builds up hype. I'm hyped even talking about it. But like I said earlier, this arc will pretty much decide the starting 11 for the U20 team. We all know that there was gonna be one. Obviously, you can't have a team without a starting lineup, but the question is how. What will happen in this arc that will decide the starting 11? We know that the top 23 players from the Neo Egoist League will be able to play on the Japan U20 match, and we are currently on the second to last salary rankings to decide the team, and I think there are actually two players we need to look at here. It may come as kind of a surprise, but I think the two players we need to look at here are Gagamaru, our goalkeeper, and actually Fukaku Gen, the U20 goalkeeper. Gagamaru is kind of a no-brainer. He's bound to make the top 23 as our goalkeeper, but Fukaku Gen is pretty questionable, but plays a role for our theory. For a goalkeeper who hasn't done much, I don't think he blocked the shot in the Bastard versus Uber's game as well. I may be wrong though. He has a pretty high salary and is currently ranked number 19th. No other player from the OG Japan team besides Aiku and Sendao are up there, but context-wise, it does make sense and plays a role for our theory. The team will need a substitute goalkeeper, as the rules require one. It actually requires like 3 goalkeepers, but it's BLUELOCK, they can make their own rules. And even if he doesn't make the top 23, I think they'll maybe pick him up or just have him tied for the 23rd spot. The whole point is there are 2 goalkeepers, and there is specifically 23 players. In the regular FIFA U20, there are only 21 registered players, but I think he made it 23 players instead of 21 for a specific reason. Since there are 23 players and 2 goalkeepers, the math adds up. I think the next arc of BLUELOCK will be an 11 versus 11 to decide positions for the starting lineup of the Japan U20 team. Yup, I think BLUELOCK's next arc, the striker selection, will be an 11 versus 11, BLUELOCK versus BLUELOCK, final selection. The math adds up and it just makes sense. If it was 21 like the original FIFA U20 rules, there would be no way we can have an 11 versus 11. Every single position will have 2 or more players fighting for a starting spot as well, and the most important part, it decides our starting lineup for the Japan U20 team. And the reason why I mention a full match is because we haven't actually seen one in BLUELOCK since the first selection, with most of the other team being fodder characters as well. Like, seriously, try and name another player from Barou's first selection team. You can't. But 11 versus 11 within BLUELOCK, like a scrim with all the players we know, will be super action-packed and be super hype. Not only that, it will help decide the starting lineup as well. Another thing it will do is give us combinations or matchups we previously haven't seen before or haven't seen in a while. For example, what would happen if Barou and Shido played on the same pitch, or having Aiku and Isagi on the same team? Would old combinations like Bachira and Isagi work as well and better than the new combinations? So there's so many questions, and again, there's matchups as well for these positions, like Zantetsu against Chigiri for the winger position, Raichi versus Karasu for CDM. It just makes sense. These things like combinations and matchups we haven't seen will help Ego also sort out what works and what doesn't work as well. He'll be able to test chemical reactions between players we've never seen work together before. This is also where the 2 goalkeepers come into play. Like I said before, one team will be Gagamaru's team with him as the goalkeeper, and the other team will be Fukaku Gen's team with him as the other. That way there's 2 goalkeepers instead of just 1, and even if Fukaku doesn't make the top 23, I don't know, I guess they could just use BLUELOCK, man. He might actually be a better option than Fukaku. So now that you know the why, let's start getting into the how. How will the 11 versus 11 work? Now, there is no way to accurately predict or guess here, but we can use evidence from another similar arc, the third selection arc, which pretty much just bingo roll till you got a team. But at the same time, that wouldn't make any sense. Like, imagine you get a team of only defenders. Anyways, I imagine different players will be able to play in different positions to see what works and what doesn't work. Maybe the higher ranked in the NEL you were, the more choices you get to pick between what position you want to play, or maybe just Ego flat out tells you what position to play, or maybe they even decide on the spot. And there will be multiple matches. I highly doubt it'd be just one one match just because of how many players there are going for the same position. But even if it is one match, there are still so many workarounds as well. We could definitely see Ego subbing in players and subbing out players, since there are still one player remaining from the top 23, and it kind of worked like how Loki did in PXG with Rin and Cheeto. Anyways, players will be fighting for a starting spot in that specific position. We know that some players are just meant to be in some positions, like their characters now are just built for that position. Some examples of this could be Aiku, who will always be a defender, Gagamaru, who will always be a goalkeeper, and Hiyori is a midfielder. You get the gist of it. But now I'll be listing the players who I think are in contention for each position, so that visually you can see who is competing for that position. And again, we just know some players will never be in certain positions. Now we'll be listing more than 23 players just because we don't have the finalized roster yet. I'm gonna list the players who have a chance of making it. They may or may not, but if they do, they'll fight for that specific position. You'll see in a second. Starting off at the goalkeeper position, it's pretty obvious. We have Gagamaru and Fukaku again. Obviously, the starting goalkeeper will be Gagamaru. No need to explain. Aiku didn't even remember Fukaku's name in the U20 match. He just called him keeper. Fighting for the center back positions, we have a few choices. It'd be Aiku, Nico, Ryu, Igaguri, and maybe some of the U20 defenders if they make it through, like Narutepe or Neo Kazuma. The left back spot, the players in contention, we got Yukimiya, Chigiri, or Tokimitsu. It'd be super fun to see who wins this one out because they all are pretty underrated or super important to the plot. Yukimiya plays currently in left back. Tokimitsu plays as a left midfielder in PXG, but he'd fit right in here. And Chigiri owns the left side. He also played as a left back in the U20 match, so he could play it again if he really wanted to. At the right side back position, we got a lot of players here. We got Corona, Kiora, Zantetsu, Hiyori, or Atoya. Again, there isn't really an obvious one for this position. I think this is also what makes the selection extra hype, just because we don't know who will be the starting spot. Like, we don't know who could be chosen. Corona plays right side back. Hiyori has as well. Zantetsu plays as winger, but he could easily be put in side back. Kiora, we still don't know about, but he was said to be a perfect replacement for Corona at specifically the right side back position. And Atoya, I don't know. This guy's useless. He hasn't added anything to the plot. Anyways, for CDM, we got three choices, either Raichi, Karasu, or Reo. All three of these players as well are getting development, so their potentials are through the roof. Also think all three of them are pretty competitive when it comes to completing their goals, especially Raichi. We could definitely see him trying his hardest to get that starting spot. Center midfielder, we got a debate between Reo and Karasu again, and also Hiyori. I'm assuming since we just read Hiyori Lock and Hiyori is basically hyped up to be the next Sai, that he'll be the one to get chosen, and we'll see Reo or Karasu in the CDM spot. Fighting for the left wing, we got Chigiri, Barou, Bachira, Nanase, and Nagi. That one's gonna be super good. I can't wait to see that. I repeated Chigiri again as well because I do think he will fight for the winger position as well. Barou's shots are more accurate when he kicks from the left, and Bachira's 1v1 skills can push up by himself and also support the forwards with his passes. Nanase currently plays in the left wing. I don't see how he'll win over the others, but I do have to mention him. Nagi will get more development with his ego and will grow to be useful. And again, they can fight for or be put in more than one position, especially if they're more versatile. For example, Bachira is flexible and can either be in the left wing or the right wing, which brings us perfectly to the right wing. We got Bachira, Zantetsu, Atoya, and Nagi again. Same argument as before with Bachira. Zantetsu is also playing as a right wing in PXG as well. Atoya, I think he is also playing as a right winger. He's played there in the U20 match as well. And the same argument for Nagi as before. All right, offensive midfielder, we got a few choices again. Kunigami, Nagi, Bachira, and Isagi, and also Sendao. Kunigami is a forward, so this position does make more sense for him, as he can have an easier time on offense. He is more of a goal poacher or finisher, but he can still be here. Since Nagi only focuses on offense and using his traps, it'd make perfect sense to put him up here so he can focus on purely offense, exactly like the U20 game where he also plays as an offensive midfielder. Bachira's goal scoring ability shouldn't be underrated, and I think he'll probably fight for this spot as well. And again, his weapon, dribbling, and passes can work perfectly as an offensive option. Isagi, great spatial awareness with metavision. He can start up plays and also finish them with direct shot. Our main character, you guys don't need me to go over him in detail right now. Sendo currently plays as an offensive midfielder in the Ubers match. He literally has more defensive than offensive feats besides that one goal he made, but he was comparable to a U20 Isagi with his 1-2s. He could be an offensive option and he will definitely be fighting for this spot. And finally, the striker position, what BLUELOCK's goal has been this whole time. Fighting for the striker starting spot, we got Kunigami, Nagi, Shido, Barou, Isagi, and Rin. These 6 players were built for this position in my opinion and are the most hyped to fight for this spot. If there is a debate between having a lead striker, it would most likely be all of these options. And this is where the striker selection part comes in. Even though they are deciding on all the positions, obviously the main highlight and what we're all looking at is that striker position. So it'll be a selection to determine who will be the starting striker between all these guys. I think this is super hype, especially for a training arc, which is usually boring. It builds up something to look forward to and also try and predict as readers. And I think this is a topic that requires way more in-depth detail, so I'll be making making another follow-up video to this, who will be the U20 starting striker, debating their feats, who fits the position, while taking into account their development and whatnot. So with 23 players and 11 starting spots, they'll obviously all get a shot to fight for their position. I personally think in an 11 versus 11 Blue Lock versus Blue Lock show match, because that'd be so hype. It'd also give us matchups for these positions, for example pitting Zantetsu versus Shigiri for the winger position, or some matchups we've just never seen before. It'd be a way to hype up and show off our characters, while also ending some of the 1v1 debates before going into the U20. The U20 is more team-oriented and won't focus as much on the rivals in Japan compared to the other countries like Kaiser, so this will be an easy way to hit two birds in one stone, giving us the fans what we want in matchups, and also deciding the starting spot for the U20. We'll also get a lot of development and training, obviously. Like Nagi and Ryo, I doubt their whole development would just be in one Barca game, so seeing it in this arc would make the most sense. And I know there are different formations and different teams they'll be going against, so they'll swap accordingly. I'm just saying that they need to debate for a regular starting team or starter positions, like who is the best ranked in these positions. Like imagine if they didn't have the selection, they wouldn't know who the best CDM is, for example, out of Raichi, Karasu, or Ryo. It just makes sense. And again, it would be cool to see Ego test out some chemical reactions we've never seen before, especially post NEL, and we'll definitely see that in this arc, so I'm hyped. Which is a hard task to say, especially since we know the World Cup is coming, and that is more hype than anything. It was literally what Blue Lock was made for as well, so this arc really does have me super hyped. Anyways, that about wraps it up for this video. I do think there will be an arc after the NEL, and if it's something along the lines of this before the U20, I'm a happy man. Blue Lock's potential and just how much fan service they can give is actually crazy. I think the whole PXG versus Bastard just shows us that, so imagine an 11 versus 11 with all the characters we love, which we've never seen before. If you watched to the end, thank you guys so much for watching. My name's Hiryo, and I'll see you guys next one.